Welcome in, everybody. My name is Robbie Guilford. I'm a field secretary for Phi Gamma Delta. I'm the staff member that is assisting John today. Wanted to welcome you to Roundtable discussion number 2, improving housing corporation operations. This session will go from 1:45 to 2:30. Your presenter, John Ziza, Ohio 1978, currently serves as a director for the 1848 Properties Incorporation and as member of the 1848 Housing Committee. John has previous experience on the House Corporations, serving as board member and president of the Alpha Omega House Corporation. Professionally, John works in IT consulting as the president and CEO of Agility Solutions Incorporated, located in Cincinnati, Ohio. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Robbie. Welcome, everybody. Today's session is a roundtable discussion I will be facilitating. So this is your opportunity to talk amongst yourselves regarding the topic of improving House Corporation operations. I'm just here to facilitate. So after introductions, I'd like for somebody to lead off with their question or comment or topic they'd like to have addressed. So if we could, I can't say start at the top left of the screen because all of our screens look different. So if everyone would take turns and introduce themselves and tell us your name, the chapter that you're serving, and what your position is, and then we'll get started with the discussion. So I'll open it up.
I'll go.
Steve Scott, Illinois House Corp President.
Bill Oliver, Gamma Phi, Penn State House Corporation.
John O'Neill, House Corp President of Alpha Omicron University of Akron.
Bob Boothby, Section Chief for North, Toronto, and Western Ontario.
Bob Morgan, Zyduderon, Case Western Reserve House Corp President.
Dave Schreck, Kansas State, Zyduderon House Corporation President.
Ryan Garrett, House Corp President at Miami University of Ohio.
Rob Klepper, House Corporation President at Florida State University, Phi Sigma.
Jeff Keller, House Corporation President, Ohio.
Jeff Heininger. Go ahead. Paul Heininger, Michigan House Corporation member. Jeff Boyd, Michigan State Epsilon House Corporation member.
Dan Mossop, Akron, 1989, Section Chief for Northeast Ohio, which covers Case, Western Reserve University, University of Akron, and Kent State University.
Mitch Semen, I'm the BCA president at the University of Idaho at the Idaho chapter.
Steve Ramsey, North Carolina State, 2003, New Sigma chapter, House Corps member.
Joe Smith, Purple Legionnaire at the Kettering University Alpha Gamma chapter.
I'm Nicholas Rahbany. I'm actually chapter president of the Alpha Gamma chapter.
John Yates, Alpha Mu chapter, Texas A&M University House Corporation.
Tom Adams, I'm the section chief in Atlanta, working with the chapters at Georgia Tech, University of Georgia, and Clemson.
Adam Pegler, Tau Cap chapter, Toronto, Canada, treasurer for the Housing Committee.
Anyone else before we get started? Okay. Well, who has a topic they'd like to bring up? Please, go ahead. Go ahead, Daniel.
I have a colony at Kent State. They were on campus from 1960 to 1980, and we're trying to bring them back. They've been a colony for 3 years. One of the things that they've done locally is 4 or 5 have gone together and leased a house together, which at least gives them a nucleus. Assuming that we can get them to chartering, what are some of the steps that we should follow immediately afterwards to start assembling a house core and eventually a plan for a house?
Anyone want to respond?
Hey, Dan, go hire Dave Schreck.
Yeah.
I second that.
Well, one of the things is to ask recommendations about graduates that might be interested, old graduates even, because
I'm looking at one who's 2 squares to the left of you on my screen and just volunteered you. So maybe you want to volunteer John O'Neill instead.
I've already got 700 emails asking me the same thing.
So I'll go ahead and start on it. How much money do you have? That's always the key deal on how much house you can build is how much money you got.
Well, right now we have 0, but we have we've been friend raising and recruiting a number of Kappa Upsilon graduates who have expressed interest in the colony being successful. And while they haven't expressly stated it, I think that they would like to see them get into a house. So we would start with them.
If you haven't really got any money right now, you're going to have to rent. That's as far as I can see. You need to get a stream of money started. My favorite is PayPal. On anyone and anyone under 30 has a PayPal account. You set up a chapter or a house corporation PayPal account, and you get people to sign up. You start with a $10 club. If you go on PayPal and sign up to give $10 every month to the house corporation, PayPal will collect it every month and put it in the house corporation account. As a deal for signing up for the $10 club, you get to come to pig dinner for free. This increases pig dinner attendance, which is also a very good thing. As you get people that are better able, you have an 1848 club. You can have a $50 club, whatever you want. And this is not the total amount of money you want from these people, but you build a sense of giving in the graduates that and your target audience is this year's graduating seniors. You want to talk to them, 1 month, whenever they're having that final chapter meeting and emotions are running high. Here, sign up for the $10 club. At Georgia Tech, it was advertised as the price of 2 drinks per month. And that sold very well. And so once you got a stream of money coming in, see what's going. Once again, the chapter needs to be operating in very good condition. You need to be sending out newsletters, highlighting graduates, not talking about what the undergraduate chapter is doing, talking about the wonderful things the graduates are doing. And build up your pig dinner, build up scholarship. Scholarship's very important. People are giving money to a successful organization, not to a loser. So all of these things go together, hand in hand. What you hear from headquarters about running a good chapter, do those things and it'll improve your cash flow.
Hey, to go along with what Tom said, Dan, and you think about Dan and I were from the same chapter. I'm just a little bit older as a founding member at Alpha Omicron. The way we got our house was we had a graduate by the name of Bud Mangles who took a personal loan. And so we sat down as a newly formed house corporation and said, we're going to get you off of this loan in X amount of years. And then what we did was what Tom said is then we started to target, how do we start raising funds? So there is I guess a little bit of a hybrid what Tom said. If you don't have any cash, can you target some of the historical Kent graduates that had been around for a long time and ask, can you get one or a group of them to give you a loan? But you got to give them a plan that you're going to get their names off of that loan by a certain time frame by raising funds. And that's what we did with Bud.
Yeah, Danny, just to chime in here from Phi Sigma, I mean, I'm happy to share with you our bylaws and things like that, the very building blocks of a first step house corporation. You know, that's going to be your first start, is incorporating. We are a 501c7, and which that exempts us from property taxes from our city. So that's something that you might want to consider. We have bylaws. Our house corporation was established in 1967, so they're going to be a little antiquated probably. But we have those bylaws. That's going to be your framework of a house corporation. From then, it's about fundraising. It's about getting that cash flow. I would suggest if you have a smaller colony going forward, you got to get in the market somewhere. It's like getting a house in California. You buy as small as you can afford, and you just upgrade over the years. So I mean, I know our chapter started with a 3-bedroom house back in 1968. And now we're in a 26-man house, 8,500 square feet over the course of that years. So it's just about getting in and then just slowly building up. So, I mean, that would be my advice. And I'm sure the 1848 House Corporation at Nationals probably has examples of bylaws that you could probably use to build a framework up, and just whether or not you want to create an LLC or something that will shield you in terms of liability, you and your members in terms of liability. I think that's probably your very first step after identifying people that are willing to do it.
Thank you.
As far as identifying people who are willing to people your house corps, as a house corps, we had no BCA, and we looked through the ranks of former undergraduate officers. That's where I'd start. Guys that were presidents, house managers. If you had house managers back in the day, those were very helpful too. And we look at our BCA as where we're going to recruit to bring guys onto house corps.
I did want to ask a question directly going off that. Josh Sewell, Alpha Beta, University of Alabama at Birmingham. So we're actually fairly new to all of this and recently established a BCA and are also trying to start getting the works in for a housing corps. Yet we're having issues with connecting to people and getting them to simply respond to us. Do you have any recommendations on that?
Somebody who knows them, a classmate, an uncle. Again, it's that personal connection. And if there's older guys, go through IHQ to find out who was what back in the day. Lean on IHQ for data scrubbing for who is in the area, who may not be a graduate of your university, but a local Fiji who is just a good purple guy.
Hey, Josh, was your biggest problem that they're not responding to a good contact information, or you don't have good contact information, therefore you can't reach them?
A little bit of both.
Okay. Yeah, we unfortunately have a horrible database that we went through a fundraiser and found out probably 150 of our 500 grads were probably up to date. So we ended up calling guys, kind of what Steve said, guys that were close in their graduating classes, going through LinkedIn, going through Instagram, any type of media we tried to get, whether it was a good phone number or a good email, and we're still in the process of updating it. So that's the toughest part. But if you do have a good contact, I'd say a phone call. Unfortunately, I have a son that's probably not much older than you, and these kids just love to text and email versus a phone call or a personal visit to say, hi, I'm Josh. We're starting this thing at our campus. I know you graduated in X year. We'd like your help, and here's what we'd like your role and responsibility to be. And you'd be surprised how many people want to help.
Okay, thank you for that.
And social media too. I mean, a little bit of public shaming for your whole chapter probably won't go unheard. I mean, if you want to put something out on your Facebook group and say, you know what, we've reached out to 50 guys and asked them if they wanted to be a part of our newly formed house corporation and no one's responded. We really need some help here. I mean, that probably can't hurt.
Good idea.
Okay, going back to Dan's original question, regarding getting started. I think that Dave had a lot of really good information in his keynote. If you haven't already, you might want to put together a strategic plan and share that with the people that you're trying to recruit to your board, and have them own that and build on it, and use that as a way to sell what you're trying to do. That way you can share the vision that you have, and it's likely that the vision you have today is probably going to change a few times before you get to a point where you can really sell it to a large audience. But that's okay. That's part of the process. But start with your vision, get help. If you need help with communications, look for decade reps. If you have people from the past, what we've done at Ohio is we've split decades up into two groups, the first half of the decade and the second half of the decade. And we've identified a brother in each of those areas, typically a past president, because they tend to know the most people and have the widest respect across their peers. And they're good resources to help you get people across the different decades. Other questions, other topics?
Bill Oliver from Penn State. How do you deal with members that live out of the house and don't want to pay their fair share or their fee, whatever you want to call it?
Suspended their membership privileges. They're not allowed to be in the house anymore or on the property to attend any social. There were 9 guys that we had to do that with.
I agree with that statement, but the other brothers at the house don't enforce it. You know, they're my fraternity brother, unless they get disaffiliated. So it has not worked with us.
Is it part of their dues, Bill?
Oh, go ahead.
Yes, yeah, part of
Okay.
the dues.
I was going to say to talk on what Dave said. What we had to do at Kansas State, it started with being real clear with the undergraduates on their operating budget and helping them understand their costs of operation. Once the members understood they were bearing the costs of operating the fraternity, it helped them understand that we're all in this together. There's no status in the fraternity for 5th year or out of house brother. You're either a graduate or an undergraduate.
Right.
And it took some teaching to help them understand that. But through education, they came to understand, yeah, if this brother isn't going to pay his fair share pro rata of out of house dues, which are fair and significantly reduced, the brothers came around to understand that, yeah, they're not going to free ride on this. The other thing we had to do, which was really important 2 years ago, was get access security put on the chapter house. Prior to that, it was an open door, and it didn't matter whether you were current or not. So we put a key card system in. It was a significant investment. It was an upgrade in security and safety, one of the pillars of the House Corps' objectives. But the other big piece that it did was when you shut that card off and that brother can no longer just enter and enjoy the privileges of the property if they're not paying their fair share, that had a very positive impact for Kansas State as well.
Hey,
We
Bill.
also have a security camera system. So if a brother does let someone in, we can look on the tapes and see.
Hey, brothers, I wanted to add, and obviously I've had the privilege of working the last 2 years under the tutelage of Brother Ziza as being my predecessor, or, the one that handed it down the road to me. But to your point, we do have a key card access. The brothers prop the doors open. They struggle with charging the people, the brothers, the out-of-house brothers, their fair share, if you will. And I brought this up in the other roundtable about fundraising. Is one thing that we've done, and it's been kind of an eye-opener, because I have kids that are college age, and they get their eyes opened as well as the brothers in the chapter. Is we brought up a flat fee, so the housing corporation charges the chapter. I think this year it was like 90 grand a semester, and we're like, we don't care who you charge, how you charge them, but you better pay us X dollars, so many, 4 times, over so many months kind of thing. And we let them figure that out and work with the brothers to determine what's fair for living in the house and what's fair for living out of the house. So it allows us to baseline a budget. Has it been a struggle? Absolutely. It's not a panacea, but that takes some of that worry away from the housing corporation of, am I collecting the money from each brother or chasing each of the undergraduates? It also allows you, again, like I said, to baseline your budgeting so that it's coming in, or it's the chapter that has to make up the difference. So just a thought. It's got its own issues, but it does help in some areas.
That was, if I could point to the best decision that I ever made as a house corporation president 6 years ago, when we recolonized, actually when we rented to another fraternity while we had our charter revoked, was we did a 1 month rent to one entity. And that is what we collect. We do not collect per brother. We do not collect parlor fees. We do not chase everyone around for, we get one check, 1 month, and that's how we do it. And it was a turning point for me as a house corporation president and for us as a house corporation. If I could give one piece of advice to any house corp, it would be you rent to the chapter and they provide you either a monthly or a semester check. And that's what I was going to say. That's how we solve that problem. We put it squarely back onto the undergraduate membership, and if they decide to carry brothers, then that's a decision that they make.
Guys, Steve Scott, Coyote, Illinois again. Something we found, a lot of what we're trying to do, enforce the behaviors we're trying to inculcate, you rely so heavily on the undergraduate cabinet. We found poor knowledge transfer from the outgoing to the incoming. We worked with our BCA, younger guys who were all officers who were just sharp and more relevant. We made transition manuals for the new president, new treasurer, new chairs, house managers. That way there's no, well, I never knew. And before COVID, we would have a kickoff every semester. We'd have BCA and House Corps members in the dining room, and it was, we'd start off with our expectations, then we'd move to general discussion, and then Q&A. Ask us anything. We're the House Corps, but we're still Fijis. Any question, any beef, let us know. COVID's kind of jacked that up, but anything you can do to cement the knowledge transfer into that new cabinet right away is key. Finally, our BCA president is a former undergrad president. He mentors our undergraduate chapter president, calls about once a week, no more than once every 2 weeks, just to support them, especially when they're starting in.
Good idea.
Hey, Steve Ramsey. Yeah, Steve Ramsey, North Carolina State. We had, if you've not done that sort of cultural education and the knowledge transfer, structured knowledge transfer, like Steve Scott was talking about, is vital for turnover. But if you've not done that sort of cultural education because you're over a couple of years, because you're just starting out, we found that the penalty, the social cost of enforcing the parlor fees for out-of-house brothers was often not worth the money that you were collecting. Now, we never had like a rent revolt or anything else like that, because the undergraduate chapter would occasionally decide to cover somebody who was in a legitimate hard case. But what we did have is, everybody who signed up for the chapter, or everybody who pledged the chapter, they had a parlor fee, and that was a contract. It was an enforceable contract. And what we would do is we were like, look, man, we're not going to come after you. We're not going to enforce on this, while you're an undergrad. But, the House Corps is perpetual. And, like, if you leave this chapter with a debt, then we're going to turn it over to collections. we're just going to turn it over to collections. And we didn't do that until after people got out of the house and got graduated because of the, because of the social impact of it. With the exception of like, we had a couple of like, we had a discipline case or two where we kicked somebody out and then we would turn them over to collections for anything outstanding. But generally, we didn't have too much of a problem. That sort of cultural education, carried, did it for voluntary compliance. But like propping the doors open and people letting other folks in, hey, they're my brother kind of thing. It wasn't too much of a problem. But yeah, the social cost is not worth the squeeze. And if you're running it that close on your house core budget, then you really need, where like 2 parlor fees make the difference between making the rent and not, then like really, there's some other issues going on too. Over.
Yeah, Case Western, about 2 years ago, we had to completely kind of reevaluate how we were handling our parlor fees because we had historically indexed it as a roughly 10% of the rent level. And as the university, which we index most of our room rates off of, as those rates over the years had grown disproportionate to a lot of other costs in the area, what we were finding was that the undergraduates did have a very legitimate concern over the actual dollar amounts because it was creeping up close to $1,000 a year by the time you looked at it from a percentage basis. So we actually had to take a step back and relook at what our financial needs were from a contribution perspective for those out-of-house brothers. And once we re-indexed it to a much more feasible level, it was actually, our chapter dues were a fraction of the cost of the allocated parlor fees, which created just a negative psychological association with the parlor fees just because of its size. Once we were able to re-index some of that stuff amongst the members, it really helped smooth that out and made the issue go away.
Seems like you guys are having a lot of chasing going on. And somebody else mentioned it on this call. I mean, we set our budget, the house corporation standpoint of not just the renters, et cetera, but our parlor fees are based into that. So we don't bill, I think somebody else said, we don't bill individuals. We say to the chapter cabinet, it's X amount of dollars per 2 payments, 3 payments a semester. I don't care if you take it out of Rush or Social, or I don't care where you get it from. I don't care how many members you have in there. We need this many guys in the house. Here's the rent with parlor fees in it. And we get 3 payments each semester. And there's no discussion. There's no complaining about outside parlor fees because those guys that are outside the house, they don't see it. It's a rent. Here it is. Some of it comes from their dues, but they don't see it. We don't really get any complaints. We used to. And it's like, okay, we got to figure out a way to disguise this thing. So that's what we do. We just do a flat fee. And I think somebody else said, we know what our break even point is with our guys in the house. And then after that point, we say, you know what, if you get to whatever, we have a 28-man house. If you get to 26, 27, 28, we'll give you this type of rate reduction. So it's some incentive for these guys that fill the house.
Our parlor fee, out-of-house fee included dinner at the house on chapter Monday nights, also lunch on Wednesdays to bring the out-of-house guys into the house on a regular basis. Well, COVID shot the heck out of that, and our fee was based on that cost and just an ancillary additive to that. We made the out-of-house fee optional since basically we're not allowing the out-of-house guys into the house to meet University of Illinois requirements. So once COVID is over and we get back to the new normal, we'll probably go back to what we did. And final point, at about 2/3 of the way through the semester, if there's some guys who haven't paid, we just have the treasurer write us a check out of the social budget. And that works.
I would encourage, if you're not having your house corporation lease or rent the house to the chapter, and then we have the chapter utilize the services of LegFi, and they send out billing invoices every month, or depending on the plan, whether it's monthly, semesterly, or annual. They send it to the parents. They send a statement, and So Leg-Fi does the collecting instead of having the treasurer run around the house trying to get guys to pay their bills. It works quite well, and it costs us $3 per man per month.
I agree.
We gave
Electronic
up
payment
2%.
is excellent.
We gave up 2% to the university, and we haven't had a payment problem since. With the university billing system, it precludes their obtaining their diploma if their bills aren't met. So we've not had a single payment issue since we switched to that billing method.
Yeah, the university used to collect our money for us. But then the same thing, they wouldn't let them register the next semester, or they wouldn't give them their diploma at the end of the year. But that went by the wayside when a lot of the problems with fraternities happened. But we do have 2 leases. We call them contracts, but we do lease the house to the chapter, and the chapter then leases it to the individuals. But as president of the House Corporation, I'm always getting calls, I'm always getting emails, even from some of the parents. What can we do to have an extended payment plan? What can we do to not pay? And it particularly comes from these out-of-house brothers. And my problem with it is, yeah, you can send them to collections and you can disaffiliate them. But as House Corp president, I'm looking for graduates who want to donate back to the house after they get out. And those kind of members will never do it. If you take them to collections, if you throw them out, disaffiliate them, just say goodbye. You'll never get a nickel from them. And it's hard enough to get donations from good graduates versus the ones that you chastise in some manner.
Nick, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah. So kind of ish on topic about dues and stuff like that, and getting brothers to pay those specific dues. One big thing that our chapter is struggling, of course, is finances. To not go into like the very nitty gritty about everything, Kettering has 2 sections were really special. So 2 chapters, A section and B section, live in the house, and combined we have a total of around 17 brothers, and at least for our section we have 6. So we are very small, and each brother is paying about $4,000 in dues. And for that, also for insurance, we are paying around, our section is paying around $8,000 a year for Holmes Murphy insurance, stuff like that. And I wanted to try to bring this up to our housing corporation about trying to work on reducing our cost for our insurance, or trying to actually have that discussion where we're trying to help with our financial situation. I was wondering if you guys would be able to provide any advice in that kind of topic.
Get more members.
We were lucky enough that our most recent recruitment term, we were able to get another 6 guys. So we're doubling the size of our chapter. But yeah, we're always trying to work to get new members.
Is your treasurer a certified accountant?
No, he is not at Kettering. He used to be a math major, but I was the one that personally redid all of our finances.
Yeah, our treasurer is a certified accountant, and he is of great assistance to me.
But Nick, you're an undergrad, right?
Yes, I am.
So you're not a house corporation. And so what your question was, can anything be done to because what I'm hearing you say is you think your insurance expenses are very large compared to your total expenses. And I think your original question was, how can you reduce those or manage other costs? Did I understand that correctly?
I want to bring it up, actually have that discussion with our house corporation president to say, hey, can we actually look at our current insurance costs and try to work on this down? And like, I wanted to know, like, if you guys had any advice on the actual like intricacies about the insurance and all that, instead of us paying the $8,000 for an unknown, like to Holmes Murphy just for any reason.
Hey, Nick, one thing you should probably look at is each year your property insurance probably has an inspection and a walkthrough of your chapter house. And in that, there'll be recommendations from them on how you can reduce or things that you could mitigate. For us, we have a 1950s, used to be an old girls' dorm, but it's every year they come back and say, yes, exit lights are lit, you know, your fire extinguishers are all filled. The one thing they always bring up is sprinkler systems. And you know, we're not going to, at least at this time, put it in, but there should be a report and you should have access to it where you can go and say, what can we do different? Or what have they recommend for us to do different? And how can we get that done to bring the insurance costs down?
For what I know about our inspection, we have it yearly, have it happen, and everything that they say, they verbalize it to us and we get it fixed. And that's all that I have access to. Well, yeah, I can look into
chapter
trying
president, you want to see it.
Yeah, I'll ask them about actually seeing this like report from the walkthrough.
Property.
And Nick, sorry, go ahead, Bob.
I was saying, Nick, your property insurance costs are going to stay fairly consistent from year to year because your property hazard exposures don't change very much from year to year of how much you're trying to insure, the value of your building, and things like that. One of the things that you can also do to make sure that you are current is the liability portion of the premium that we're contemplating and you're working with the international fraternity on. Make sure that they've got an accurate count for your chapter, as it's a head count based measurement. So making sure that your roles and everything are current. If your chapter has shrunk down to only 6 guys from maybe 20 before, you want to make sure that you're only really being looked at as a 6 or a soon to be 12-man chapter versus a 20, so that your costs are adequate from that perspective.
All right, thank you.
And I apologize, Nick. I apologize, Nick. I thought you were a House Corporation president. So when I said our treasurer is a CPA, I'm talking about the House Corporation. He advises the chapter treasurer.
All right. It's all right. Thank you so much for at least providing your advice, though.
I would add, in discussions with Holmes Murphy, 3 things that House corporations / chapters can do to reduce their insurance. Sprinkler system is certainly one of the top ones. The water mitigation system or tracking system to detect leak detection is another one. Having a house director actually provide you with an insurance discount, and also having a professional property management company is actually a nice discount that you get. So
Right.
Those are things to consider for all of you.
Yeah, I'll discuss this with our House Corporation president, as what's really interesting is a lot of this stuff that is trying to be handled by our House Corporation. It's actually handled by us undergraduate chapter. We don't have a lot of like actual back and forth communication or a lot of interaction with our House Corporation. And that's one kind of relationship that I'm trying to build up. So thank you guys so much.
I would suggest you reach out to your section chief and have your section chief try to help you with your House Corporation, as well as maybe your PL. Do you have a BCA?
Yes.
You might, use the resources that you have and see if they can't help you build that relationship with your House Corporation. But certainly utilize your section chief.
All right, will do.
Other topics?
Right now at Phi Sigma, we've got 2 mortgages, and we're getting to a point where, well, yeah, we've crossed over our 20% equity line for our appraised value, and we're looking to refinance into one. I'll throw it out there. Have any of you heard of any lenders, either on a national level or in Florida, who are taking say a $1.6 million loan from a fraternity? That's like the golden goose for me. I'm looking for a lender who would be amenable to accepting that level of risk for a $2.3 million property. So I'll throw it out there for discussion if anyone has any ideas.
Hey, Rob, are you looking for it without personal guarantees?
That is correct. I have not been able to secure that from my graduate base yet.
Well, I'm listening too to see what people say, because it's tough.
Yeah.
What's the value of your property?
We've got a 2019 appraisal at 2.3 million and a total of about 1.65 in outstanding. So we're well below the 20%, cutoff, so to speak, well above it rather. Our first is with Cadence, formerly Superior, who got bought out. And we have a second with the builder, with the person that did the major reno on the house about 11 years ago. But, so we're slowly but surely over the last 11 years after we purchased the house, we've paid down enough to get to that point. But even our lender for the first is reticent to take on the additional that the second represents, even though it will only take us back to the original loan amount that we had with them for the first. So that kind of gives you a sense of just how difficult it's been for us to find a lender for something like this. And that's a game changer for us. Just FYI, I mean, if we can roll into one mortgage, that frees up close to $50,000 a year in cash flow. So it would be a turning point for our chapter.
How old is your chapter?
Chartered in 1968, originally lost it in 2009 and recolonized, I want to say, in 2013. So we've been back in the house since 2014, but we purchased the house that we're in now in 2008, 2009.
So your local banker won't give you a loan. Really?
No. Right. Yeah. I've gone to all of them. And they have a real problem getting their heads around why a 26 unit, 13 rooms, double occupancy, why a 26 unit house at a certain X number of rent can generate more income to cover a larger payment. You see what I'm saying? They have a hard time getting their heads around the fraternity house space. The fact that we now have 120 members. So we have a base to draw parlor fees from that they can supplement that rent income every month with. So they can charge a lower rent per person in the house, supplement that, and still make their monthly rent income. So that's one of the big issues. And frankly, it's a risk mitigation issue for them in terms of, the whole fraternity culture, the university's attitudes towards the Greek system is ever evolving. And those are some of the hurdles that we've had to get over with.
How close is your house to the campus?
Very close, a block away.
So, in Kansas State, in Manhattan, the property value is determined by what the university would use our property for if we were to abandon the house. So, because we're only 2 blocks off campus, and so the bank says we're not worried about the value because we know the university will take the property.
And that's a great consideration too. I think right now the dirt is appraised at about 1.2, so we're not there yet. We still have probably $400,000 or $500,000 to go to get to that base level of what the dirt's worth. But I mean, yes, that's our ultimate fallback, of course. When you go to a bank and you say, hey, listen, the least amount you'll get for this is 80 cents on the dollar.
Have you provided them with a plan about how you're going to manage this money over the next 5 years?
No, and that's a good point. I mean, I've gone to them with a bunch of documentation, but not necessarily anything about, they say, a strategic plan or anything like that. I emailed you earlier, right at the end of your presentation, Dave, and asked you for yours because we've got our folks wanting to sit down and do a 5, 10, 20 strategic plan for housing in particular for us. So that's something that we're going to be doing.
Rob, I hate to cut you off. I'm sorry, Dave. It's 2:30 and the next session is starting. Rob, you've already reached out to Dave. 1848 would love to help you with this. And one comment I would have regarding your search, have you talked to the university? Because sometimes universities will lend money to fraternities. I
have not. I will ask.
You might want to check. you might want to check with the university because some do offer loans. Brothers, I have to cut it off because we've hit the deadline. If any of you have any questions that you want to have answered that we weren't able to discuss in this program, simply either chat them to me or send an email to 1848 Properties or send me a direct email, johnziza@agility.com, and we'll get back to you. Thanks so much for the wonderful session. You guys did a great job.
Thank
Talk
you.
soon.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.